When it comes to wrestling families, few are as legendary as the Von Erichs. But sadly, they are probably just as known for tragedy as they are for being talented. Along with a rich history of in-ring ability and some major matches, the Von Erichs also carry a legacy of what families have to fear when they look for a life inside the squared circle. Either way, their story is one that is definitely worth telling, and that's exactly why it's the topic of this episode. Because today, Dave knows the Von Erich family. The real family name of the Von Erich clan is actually Atkinson. How did this legendary Texas clan go from the Atkinsons to the Von Erichs? Well, it all began in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. That's where the family patriarch, Jack Atkinson, would adopt the famous last name. Now, even before his time as a Von Erich ever began, Jack would be quite successful as a wrestler. And despite never winning the NWA or the WWF World title, he would go on to win the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. And also later in his career, Jack would do quite well in a backstage role for the NWA, WCCW, and also in Japan. But it would be during his time in Canada where Jack would get a rebranding in Klondike Wrestling thanks to his trainer, the legendary Stu Hart, who wanted Jack as part of a heel brother tag team of German extraction. For this, Jack would not only need a very ethnic sounding last name, but he would also need a wrestling brother, and Stu provided him with both. Jack Atkinson became Fritz Von Erich, and he would be partnered up with Walter Sieber, a young Canadian wrestler who became Waldo Von Erich. And just like that, the two became kayfabe brothers, despite Jack and Walter having no real-life relation. And once partnered up, the two would capture the NWA Southern Tag Team Championship for the Mid-Atlantic Territory, and the NWA American Tag Team Championship, twice. And without his fake brother, Walter was still able to get some singles glory too, winning heavyweight championships in promotions such as the National Wrestling Federation and, of course, Stampede Wrestling, just to name a few. And he was also able to win tag team gold with partners other than Fritz, such as Canada's own Gene Kiniski. Now, both Waldo and Fritz would be known for their vice-like iron claws, so much so that Fritz even adopted it as a nickname in Japan. And while the pair did very well, they, like so many other tag teams, did eventually split up. However, their split was due to the first serious dose of tragedy to hit the Von Erich family. In Niagara Falls, New York, Jack Atkinson Jr., Jack's first son, suffered at the hands of a household accident at the age of only 6 years old and tragically passed away. Following this, Jack Sr. stopped traveling to the American East Coast, but not wanting to stop Walter from working in the lucrative Worldwide Wrestling Federation in New York, the two just went their separate ways, but still kept their fictional last name. Now moving on to Jack's third son, David Von Erich worked mainly for WCCW, having noteworthy matches against the likes of Harley Race and Ric Flair, as well as the Von Erich family's most famous feud of all, but we'll get to that later. And unfortunately, the Von Erich family tragedy continued as David Von Erich and his wife lost their daughter during infancy, and ended up divorcing not long after. Several years later, and he would be found deceased in a Tokyo hotel room. Now, the exact nature of this tragic incident has been reported differently by different sources, but that is all I'm going to say on the subject. Next, Mike Von Erich, the fifth son of the Von Erich family. Allegedly, Mike had no desire to become a full-time wrestler, preferring to work behind the camera instead. However, after what happened to his brother David, Mike was urged to serve as a replacement. Mike then suffered a shoulder injury, and after the surgery, he was discovered to suffer from a rare case of toxic shock syndrome. A couple of years later, and Mike would take his own life. Jack's next son, Chris Von Erich, the sixth and youngest second-generation Von Erich, suffered from health issues such as asthma and having very brittle bones. And he also lacked the physical stature of his brothers. But unlike Mike, Chris had a huge desire to become a pro wrestler, but his health would limit his success in the industry. However, Chris did persist through all of his issues, and he did have a noteworthy feud with the man who would eventually become Paul Bearer and Steve Austin. However, sadly, his frustrations with not being able to succeed ultimately caused him to take his own life just before his 22nd birthday. Next up would be the most famous of Jack's sons, the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. He was also known as the modern-day Warrior, and he wrestled in world-class championship wrestling along with his brothers. And he too feuded with a lot of similar wrestlers, but one thing that distinguishes him is that he was able to beat Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight title at a tribute show that was dedicated to his brother David. However, his title reign did not last very long, which is a trend that also seemed to have followed him after winning the WWF Intercontinental Championship, when he lost it right back to Mr. Perfect soon thereafter. And unfortunately, just a few years after that, Kerry would also end his own life. But as I said before, not all the Von Erichs family legacy is tragedy. Time to focus on some of the positives with Jack's second and last surviving son, Kevin Von Erich. Billed as the Golden Warrior, Kevin mostly worked in WCCW, where he got to feud with the likes of Chris Adams and of course Ric Flair. Kevin was known for using his father's iron claw as well as having a devastating body scissor, and he also had a propensity for wrestling barefoot. Kevin would go on to marry and have 2 sons and 2 daughters, and he would also be on hand to accept the induction on behalf of his family into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009. And as for Kevin's 2 aforementioned sons, Ross and Marshall, they both became professional wrestlers themselves. Ross's real name is David, and he wrestled for Pro Wrestling Noah alongside with his brother Marshall, whose real name is Kevin. And the pair also wrestled in TNA, making their television debut at Slammiversary 12. Then of course you also have Kerry's daughter, Lacey Von Erich. She got her beginnings in WWE's then developmental territory, FCW, and she was there to see her family's induction into the Hall of Fame. From there she went around the independent circuit and eventually ended up in TNA as part of the faction, The Beautiful People, before retiring. And now back to the fictional side of the family. Waldo Von Erich had a son. Well, kind of. Just like how Waldo was a kayfabe brother to Fritz, Waldo had a fictional son, Lance Von Erich, who was portrayed by William Vaughn. He was called up by Fritz himself as another Von Erich, despite oppositions from other members of the clan. You see, by that time, the Von Erichs were well-respected babyfaces in Texas, and some Von Erichs were uncomfortable deceiving their fans. But Fritz was adamant about Lance joining the team. With the popularity of the Von Erichs, the boys were wrestling multiple shows a day, and rotation was definitely needed. Eventually, Lance would get into a financial dispute, which led to his leaving WCCW and leaving his Von Erich identity along with it. Fritz then surprisingly broke kayfabe on television by revealing that Lance was not actually a relative. And now for what might be the very best part of the Von Erich family legacy, and the piece that ties all of this together: the historic feud between the Von Erichs and the fabulous Freebirds. The popularity of this feud is exactly what caused such a heavy demand for the Von Erichs and helped to endear them with the Texas audience. In fact, the Von Erich family is a large reason, if not the reason, for Texas being a major territory in the professional wrestling scene at that time. Now, this glorious rivalry all began with Ric Flair, one of the biggest heels of all time. He had a cage match against Kerry Von Erich, with Freebird Michael Hayes as special guest enforcer. And with this match, it looked like finally, the dirtiest player in the game, Ric Flair, had nowhere to run and justice would be served. However, Hayes' animosity against Flair got the better of him, which caused him to hit Flair, knocking him out. After hitting him, Hayes then called for Kerry to go for the pin, but Kerry refused, not wanting to win unfairly. Hayes then left the cage in anger, and when Kerry went after him, Freebird Terry Bam Bam Gordy slammed the cage door into Kerry's head. This Freebird heel turn caused the fabulous Freebirds to be despised in Texas, nearly causing riots. And as hated as the fabulous Freebirds were, the Von Erichs were equally loved, if not more so. Well, there you go, there's just a little bit of insight into Texas's favorite wrestling family. But what did you think? What are some of your favorite Von Erich moments? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, this has been Dave Knows.